doing, YouTube? This is your boy Brogi Naric, back again with another episode of BUMP Psychology. And if you're new to this channel, it's a series where I usually do wrestling reactions to various wrestling pay-per-views, and sometimes I do talk about topics on wrestling. And this is going to be a new series I'm going to be doing for a little while. We'll see how it goes. But we're going to be doing reviews of Viceland's Dark Side of the Ring. Now, the season has already started, and I've watched all the episodes, but we're going to focus on the most recent episode, which was David Schultz and a slap heard round the world. We're going to be giving our full spoiler review. I'm here with my guests, my homie, Avery Jones from the Avery Jones Podcast. Introduce yourself, brother.
Oh, yeah, what's up, brother? Had to throw the Macho Man in there because, of course, we're doing the Dark Side of the Ring. David Schultz was also an episode. But, yeah, my name is Avery Jones, of course, the host of the Avery Jones Podcast. Make sure you check out my channel and my podcast, streaming everywhere, including Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and Spotify as well, the hottest platforms out right. I do anything from money, sex, drugs, lies,
moves. All right.
We do it all.
You putting it all out there, okay.
We're putting it all out there. If you want anything, you just want to hear a genuine conversation with a genuine guy, I'm your man. So definitely check out the Avery Jones Podcast. Appreciate you letting me get my
Yeah, no problem. Now the last episode we reviewed, with the last episode of your podcast, we reviewed the last episode of Dark Side of the Ring, which was the assassination of Dino Bravo. So if you want to listen to that or see it, you can check it out on YouTube or on his various platforms for the podcast. And we are both big wrestling fans. He also used to sort of wrestle a little bit. You can let the people know about that.
Oh yeah, I forgot to tell people that. So I actually was in the business for a little, not too long, but enough to get my feet wet, couple injuries here and there. So when it comes to a lot of like the lingo and the backstage part of things, I'm very interested in because I've been a part of it. I've gotten to see kind of certain things happen, and so to see it from years before I was even born is pretty cool.
Right.
So that's exactly.
Right. So, let's get into this. This episode, it's okay. So compared to some of the other episodes we've seen, and this season in particular, they'll have the episodes when it's like murder mystery, something really dark, and then they'll have some lighter episodes. And this episode is definitely one of more of the lighter episodes, but it's still interesting and brings up very vital parts of what wrestling is and what it used to be in a way, because this episode in particular, David Schultz and the slap heard around the world, focuses on. You've probably seen the clip. You probably didn't know who it was, but you've probably seen the clip where there's a big blonde wrestler staring at this reporter, and the reporter says, "I think it's fake," and then the wrestler just slaps him in the face and then slaps him again. You've probably seen that clip numerous times at some point in your life. Didn't know who it was, but that man was David Schultz, and the man who was getting slapped was 2020 reporter John Stossel. And this was a huge scandal and controversy that happened back in, I forget when it was. Was it like 80? Was it 83?
I know it was in the 80s. I don't know the exact.
Yeah, it was like 83, 84. But it was like right when WWE was on the verge, so right before WrestleMania was on the verge becoming a mega industry, So it was that early thing, and it was that spark that kind of sent ripples throughout the wrestling world. And this episode did a great job of trying to build the importance of why something like that was in a way necessary, but like how you could see why something like that would happen at the same time. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, exactly. I think they did a really good job. And like you said, just kind of the structure of things that happen, like in that specific order, how they happen. Mm-hmm. I think they did a really, especially in this episode, kind of like telling you without giving you a whole bunch of stuff that happened, and then really focusing on Schultz at the time, opposed to WrestleMania has happened.
Yeah.
Talk about this.
Yeah. So the main focus is wrestler Dr. D. David Schultz, which the D stands for deaf, but he was such a badass they didn't have to say that. I've heard him say that before. They had Dr. Deaf Steve Williams, and he mentioned
I
like,
didn't know that.
yeah, he was like, no, the D was for deaf, but I was so badass they didn't have to say it, and they tried to rip you out. You know, he's an interesting guy. A lot of people in modern day would say he was like the precursor to Stone Cold Steve Austin, because they were both the angry tough guy rednecks that spoke their mind and didn't give a shit type of thing. Although David Schultz was mostly a bad guy or a heel, which is known in the wrestling business, and Stone Cold was like more of an anti-hero. So David Schultz was mostly portrayed as a bad guy when he fought in wrestling, and he was a tough guy, and they really stress how his training led him for being a tough guy.
Oh, that was my favorite part. Like, that's how he was trained.
Yeah. So he was trained. Yeah, what did he go ahead?
Oh, no, I was just gonna say, because this man thought, which you're probably gonna cover in your notes, but I feel like this man was trained, or the way he was trained, he thought that it was real.
Right.
Like,
yeah. He was trained by an old school wrestler. Yeah, Herb Welsh, who was one of those real old school legit wrestlers, and they taught David Schultz like real wrestling, like almost like MMA, like submission moves, but he was doing them for quote unquote for real, because he was under the mindset that wrestling was like, he thought wrestling was like 100% legit, but it's real, but certain things are scripted. He thought it was all real, and he was beating the hell out of his the people he was training with, and then they were like, yo, you need to tell this guy that this shit is yeah, you got to tell him to chill out, because he is beating our asses right now, and I don't want to have to shoot this motherfucker. So the guy set him to the side and told him, like, all right, you're good, but we gotta, what is it? We gotta smarten you up, which is, let you on the inside of how things go, So that's a very interesting thing about his upbringing, because not a lot of wrestlers, especially nowadays, are trained like that, because it's not really as vital, No,
I feel like now, especially coming from that particular landscape and seeing how they did it back then, opposed to how I was even, it's a lot lighthearted. Like, they would literally just put you in the ring back then and beat your ass. Like, simple.
Yeah,
that's how you were, like, kind of like a brother, as David Schultz would say it. It's, you have to get beat in. Like, you literally. Yeah,
because it was very isolated, because they didn't want a lot of people within the business, and then they would do that to kind of run you off,
Right. They had to make sure this is something that you wanted to do.
Yeah.
So.
Jim Cornette. Oh no, you go ahead. Go ahead.
Oh no, I was just saying that, and that's how he got into it, and that's honestly, I think that's how he felt like it was real, because when he got there, his trainer just beat his ass.
Yeah.
And so he was like, okay, I'm just gonna beat everybody else.
Yeah,
really?
yeah. They gonna try to beat me, so I'm gonna beat and then they're kind of like, yo, dude, you need to chill the hell out. So, Jim Cornette, who's a famous wrestling promoter, manager, announcer, he's done a lot of things. He told the story of the trainer Herb Welsh used to go in the locker room, take a dump, and then he would take the shit and like put it under his armpit. So then when he would train with the guys, he would lock up and put their heads immediately in the armpit and like grind it into them and stuff. It was like, that's dirty as shit, man. It's like, why are you doing all this?
I forgot about that part. And I'm like,
you fucking
literally like
asshole.
Compared to training then, training now is just like, okay, we're gonna do a whole bunch of flippy tricks.
Yeah.
Like literally, so much light.
Shit is crazy. And the reason for that was, as I think, if he didn't mention it in the show, I've listened to another interview where David Schultz, like, the reason the older guy would train him like that was because it was a way to protect yourself, because wrestling business was very shady, especially when you're going from different territories, and especially different countries. Certain wrestlers would try you. They would try to either legitimately hurt you just to get you, so you're not one other person in the business that could take money from them. So people would try to legitimately hurt you, and you need to be able to legitimately protect yourself if shit went down, So that was another reason for being trained so hardcore.
Oh, it was very cutthroat back then.
Yeah.
Like, just with one of my buddies, Ace, he was telling me that, like, the stories that he's heard from these legends and guys that are like Jake the Snake Roberts, Dusty Rhodes, Wahoo McDaniel, whoever, it's just like you hear about these guys that it was very cutthroat back then.
Yeah.
Very, very.
Yeah, so let's see, what was so he was mainly working, he got hit the big time, he was in the AWA, and he was they mentioned he was close friends with this new big muscle head guy that kind of came into the territory, used to play the bass. Name was, well, I guess they didn't say his actual name, but basically he's Hulk Hogan. If you're not familiar with Hulk Hogan, one of the most famous wrestlers in the world. You know, Eat Your Prayers, Brother, Vitamins, Hulkamania. Yeah, this was like early before all of that, and he was broke, and him and David Schultz shared an apartment, and they were cool at this point in time. And you know, Hogan was being the good guy, the babyface, and Schultz was a really good heel or bad guy for him, so they had good chemistry. But at a certain point, that kind of faded away. What was the next thing? Huh?
Oh, famous.
Well, it's not. Well, okay. Well, even before that. So yeah, Hulk gets famous. That's when Vince McMahon, the owner and operator of WWE, WWF at the time, is starting to build up his empire, and he snatches Hulk Hogan. And Hulk Hogan, being a smart man, also snatches up people at the AWA that he's cool with, mainly Gene Okerlund, David Schultz. I think Piper was another one. There was some other guys that worked in that company that he took with him to WWF because they would help him, and also he was, you know, looking out for his friends, you know, but they can also help him look good when he's in, you know, goes to the WWF, which is smart. Hogan is a very smart businessman. So
especially Schultz, because he was like, he told Vince McMahon before, like when Hulk Hogan picked him, Hulk told Vince, he was like, David Schultz, we need a lot of money back here. So I know for a fact our chemistry is good. We're going to make money. So without David Schultz, I'm nothing. I'm not Hulk Hogan.
Yeah, to a degree. Yeah. And that's very important because you needed people you could work with in order to make money. You know, I don't think it's quite as big of a deal, especially in WWE, where it's like, because from whatever moment, they'll just throw you with a guy and it's like, all right, you do the match. But like when you're in a territory, you're going from different place to place. You want to try to put on your best foot forward, and you need a really good opponent and guaranteed money, or you can possibly do something with this guy you've never wrestled before. So it's kind of a little more of that inside baseball type of vibe, you know, like setting things up, you know what I'm saying?
Right, exactly.
And so as we go, I think at this point in the episode where he's training, he's doing good. Oh yeah, they were just talking about David Schultz's character, of how he was like I said, the big tough guy, redneck. He was like he was good. He was athletic. He was tough, but he could also talk. He can do a hell of a promo. He had that distinct voice, that rough voice where he's like, hey, he's like, yeah, when you talking to me, boy, I'll beat your tail and da 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 da. You know, like he's great. Like he's a great promo. Like he is legit, like one of the best. Like
this episode so fun.
Yes,
just
listen to his promos. Is wild. He's it's fantastic, and he's like on par with Piper, like because Piper was like that. Roddy Piper, WWE legend. They were close. They worked together, and they didn't show many clips of them doing promos because they was doing some wild stuff too. They showed a clip where because to show how like real everything was, they did a video where because at the time Vince McMahon was an announcer. He interviewed Schultz, and they're at a house, and he's got the guns on the wall. And then they had another one where he's like with his family, and he's like yelling at the kids, like, "Shut up, I'll slap you," or yelling at the wife, or "I'll slap you." And then like that was great. And then he's like, in real life, the police came to Vince's office, and they was gonna arrest him for child abuse and spousal abuse. But he's like, that wasn't real. Like that wasn't my wife. That wasn't my actual kid. Yeah, that's not my family. Like that was tapes. Like that's not real shit. Like it kind of shows you how people really bought into what the entertainment, what the business was, you know. So it's like kayfabe, as they call it, keeping the, you know, making sure you don't know the tricks of the trade was strong at this time. Then we're introduced to Mr. John Stossel, who is a ABC reporter, works for 2020, and this guy, as I got written down in my notes, John Stossel, douchebag / asshole. I did not like this guy.
This dude was a bitch.
Right? Like, you can say that. Like, this guy is the worst. Like, you see the video of him getting slapped, and you might like, oh my God, this man just got hit. But when you hear him talk, and like, that like, self-righteousness is like, this is a bitch-ass motherfucker right here. Like, I'm not... if you didn't get slapped by Schultz, you was gonna get clapped up by somebody at some point because you was a little too. Yeah, he a little
told
too.
This dude not. They told him whatever you do, do not interview him.
Well, even before that, so he was a reporter, and his thing was he liked to expose frauds and hacks and people who are getting cheated, and he would expose various businesses and stuff like that. But for some reason, he got a bug up his ass. He sees WWF is doing hot business, and I think he said he used to wrestle in college, but he was like, he knew that the professional wrestling wasn't, legit, and he's like, people really think this is real, so I gotta expose it. And I'm like, did you have that same energy for like TVs and movies? Because it's like, it's not real, but there's no con here. Like, it's one thing if a business is frauding someone, but going to a wrestling show and then finding out that the outcome is already predetermined, that's not a con. It's just entertainment at that point. Like, I don't get it. Like, he felt like he was on some sort of self-righteous crusade. Like, I gotta warn these people, they're being duped. And it's like, no, you just trying to start some shit, man. You really just trying to, it's something people don't want exposed, so you're like, I'm going to expose it, because,
and even when he was, like, people were just kind of like, okay, cool. Like, he asked people, like, do you believe this is real? And it was like, I mean, yeah, it's real to us. And
right.
Then when you find out it's not, it's just, okay.
Yeah, right, like, I'm already here.
Doing the same stuff.
Right, exactly. It may not be real, but I mean, that guy is bleeding right now. I don't know. It might be real. And that was kind of the fun, especially when you're a wrestling fan as a kid. It's like, you hear, because by the time, we're like 26, so we're like, at a certain age, it's like, oh, it's fake. But like, when you watch it, it's like, is it though? Because that looked kind of real, like, I don't think people can shoot lightning from their hands, but The Undertaker, for some reason, seems like he can do that shit real. I don't know why, but I think Undertaker can do it, like, that's that point where you're...
Oh no, I was saying I can tell you from experience. It hurts.
Yeah.
It hurts. I have a missing tooth to prove it. I've had a concussion before. I've like had a black eye, busted blood vessel in my eye because of wrestling. So right. It's like, it's as real as it possibly can get. We try to protect each other, but at the end of the day, it's real. It hurts.
Yeah, that's true. So, but anyway, Stossel is like very like indignant on trying to expose wrestling, and he just needs one guy, at least one person in the business to aid that. And we find out that is a former wrestler known as Eddie Mansfield, the Continental Lover. Say it again.
Yeah. I said that motherfucker.
Yes.
Man, I hate that guy because he is the reason why kayfabe is. Like, I never knew where the origin happened or when people just allowed other people to get into that, making it so accessible for you to find out information about what happened backstage in wrestling.
Right.
But it was him. That's where it started. And I just, like, because you couldn't cut it as a professional wrestler, you decided, oh, this is what I want to do because I'm trying to help the boys in the... Bro, shut your head.
Yeah, that was his argument. He was like, well, we were treated bad. We didn't get money. Certain money wasn't paid to us like it should have been. There's no health care, which is true, not wrong. But but then there's also to say, well, maybe you weren't really that good, or you overthought yourself. But I mean, I didn't know him that well. He seemed okay. He did decent in the promos. He wasn't god awful, but whatever. So he's like, you know what? If you're not going to treat me right, I'm going to get back at you guys. And I'm exposed to business. So he calls John Stossel and he's like, hey, I hear you doing this tell-all thing, so I'm going to be the inside guy to expose it. So, and it was pretty interesting. They showed them in the ring and they're training and he's showing them different moves. But then there was one big thing he did, which I didn't quite realize how big it was, but he exposed how wrestlers bleed on national TV. Now, there's, like, as Cornette says, there's two ways. You can do it the easy way, which would be you have a little razor blade, a little thin razor blade. When the camera's not on you, you cut yourself. And then there's the hard way where you literally just hit a person and bust them open where they're legitimately bleeding. But exposing that's a big secret that shouldn't be exposed like that, and personally, or to a degree, you know what I'm saying?
Right, and when he was exposing, he even did not want to do it because he knew it was a huge thing. Like it's something that you just don't do in professional. Tell anything else that you want to tell. Don't tell that.
Yeah, that's true. He was like, you know what, I felt. He was trying to make him seem like the victim. He's like, well, you know, I didn't really want to do it, and I was feeling that kind of pressure, but I did it anyway. Like it was a.
How did they bleed? He was like, so I just ended up telling them anyway. It's just like, no, bro, you started it, so they're gonna want to know everything. You called them. They didn't call you.
They didn't call exactly. He was like, well, I was trying to get them to focus on the health care. No, we don't want all that shit. Just show us how you bleed, motherfucker. Like we don't give it. We want to edit all that shit out. We don't care.
Just show us how you bleed.
Right. Just show us the juicy shit. We don't give a fuck about your back, nigga. Just like goddamn. But anyway, so they were like, all right. Stossel was like, yeah, we did all of that, but we just needed an interview from the officials, which would in this case be the WWF. And he ended up getting an interview backstage at the WWF. He was like, Vince McMahon seemed cool with it. He was backstage. He interviewed. He mentioned he interviewed the Iron Sheik, and then out of nowhere he had another interview, which was this big blonde-haired man, David Schultz, and he was kind of like, this guy's kind of scary, but I'm gonna go interview him. And there's different ways. I think Eddie Mansfield was like, hey, I told him if you're gonna go to the WWF, just for the love of God, do not interview David Schultz. But I believe the way it was done, well, the way David tells the story is he was told by Vince, like, hey, there's this guy named John Stossel. He's doing this documentary trying to expose the business, and I want you to rough him up a little bit to kind of scare him off, basically. That's how David tells the story. That Vince legitimately told him, like, hey, you know, rough this guy up a little bit to kind of scare him off, and because he's trying to make us look bad, show him that, you know, we're legit, we're tough. So David, because I believe David was like, he wasn't planning on being interviewed. It was kind of like a sort of a last minute thing where Vince, you know, tells him this. So Stossel interviews him, and David has said, he told him, like, hey, if we're going to do this interview, just don't say that I'm fake. He's like, don't say I'm fake. You know, don't ever say that. When they do the interview and they're talking, and Schultz is very short with him and all of that, he tells, Stossel just says, I think it's fake. David hears I'm fake, and he just slaps him. There's a quick slap to the face. Stossel like falls. No, did he fall the first one?
Yeah, he fell the first one.
Yeah, he fell the first slap. That's right. And then Stossel gets back up. He's like, that feel fake to you, boy? That's an overhand slap. Slaps him again. And then he falls again. And then Stossel like crawls away. And
David Schultz now, like, this is the funny part. This is the part I laughed at, because he was like, I was always told in training that when you hit a man and get back, you knock him back down.
Yeah, if you hit him, if he get back up, you got to knock him back down. I was like, yo, this boy is wild. And he was like, and I love the bit where he's like, you know, I just slapped him, you know, with no thought, just like my mama would slap me if I acted up. I'm like, that's some real truth right there, bro. Like I can relate to that. I can relate to that. Exactly. You talking out of turn, you getting hit. Like I get that. I can relate to that. So he was just like, all right, it's cool, it's whatever. And Vince, you know, the boys was happy. You could see Mr. Fuji in the video in the background, and Iron Sheik kind of like smiling and shit. So he was done, and then Vince gave him some time off to go wrestle in Japan. So he goes to Japan. He was wrestling wrestling legend Antonio Inoki, who's like a big time wrestler in Japan back in the day. I think he was like a politician for a while too. But anyway, he goes there, and Japan wants him to basically do the same thing he did with one of their reporters. And
so,
well, yeah, go ahead.
Oh no, I was saying that don't to tell him why he sent him to Japan.
Well, I said no. He left Japan. That's what it was. He just left for Japan.
Because Vince McMahon found out that the dude was looking to sue.
That was later. That was later.
That's the reason why he sent him to Japan, to let everything cool down.
Yeah, well, he sent him away to cool down. He hadn't sued yet. He was just in fear of. He was like, hey, just go to Japan and this will cool down. So he goes to Japan. The lawsuit came while he was over in Japan. That's it came a little bit later.
Okay.
So he's in Japan, and they're like, "Hey, we want you to slap one of our reporters." And David's like, "Well, hold it now. If you're gonna do this, I want it in writing, and I want people sign consent and all of that stuff." So they do that. He slaps the reporter. They take photos, and then it's in the news. Oh no, David Schultz is big angry American slapping reporters in Japan. So
slapping reporter.
Yeah, it's good promotion for him as the monster heel. So I think at some point that's when Stossel's like, "Oh, when he hit me, he hit my ears, and my ears are ringing. I was hit so hard in both sides of my head and my ears that my ears are ringing. My baby girl is crying, and it's so painful. I'm gonna need some compensation for this abuse." So he files a lawsuit. The problem is he doesn't sue David Schultz, which was smart because Schultz doesn't really have any money. He sues Vince McMahon, the man with the millions of dollars. Now it's a problem because Vince is involved in some legal stuff he does not want to be involved in. So when Schultz comes back, he tries to get Vince tells Schultz like, "Hey," well, the way Schultz tells it, he says Vince wants him to sign this piece of paper that says that him hitting John Stossel was not directed by him from Vince McMahon. It was not sanctioned by Vince McMahon. Schultz did that on his own, under his own accord, and has nothing to do with WWF. And David Schultz like, "Oh hell no, I'm not about to sign that. You about to get me caught up." So,
"Nah, I'm not signing that because you told me to do this."
You told me to do it, Vince. So once again, that's Schultz's way of telling the story. So. There was a moment where Stossel says he goes to the doctors, or he goes to like the doctors provided by the WWF, and they're like, "Yeah, I don't really think you're injured." I forget what was the word he said it was, but it was basically like when you're involved in a traumatic accident, the pain seems to last a little bit longer because your body is making you think it's worse than what it is. And Stossel was like, "Oh,
hold on."
Yeah, you hold on to the pain. That's right. And Stossel's like, "Oh, screw you. You're working for Vince, and I don't believe this." Now, the thing they don't mention, which David Schultz talks about numerous times in various other interviews, was the fact that when Stossel got his actual medical report, the doctor that tested him was his brother. So,
oh, wow.
Yeah. So, plot twist. So, it's a little inside, like, wait a second, is you and your brother working together in on this? Because what's the word I'm looking for? How
legitimate?
Not legitimate, but like how I can't think of the word right now. I guess legit. We'll go with legitimate. Like how legit are these medical records if this guy's your brother? Is he lying? Is he really telling the truth? So it's a little shady. So the lawsuit is going on, and Vince, once again, they're keeping the lawsuit going. Vince does not want to deal with this, and not only is this bad for Vince, but it's also bad for Hulk Hogan, because now Hulk Hogan has an opponent, someone he works with, who he's starting to not like as much anymore, like in terms of like relationships, because Hogan is becoming so big and popular. He's not as cool with Schultz as he used to be, and he's also kind of trying to push Schultz away, and this is just another reason for him to get him away, because this lawsuit for Vince is bad for Vince. If it's bad for Vince, it's bad for business. If it's bad for business, it's bad for Hulk Hogan. So I need to get Schultz out of here. So leading us into WrestleMania 1. Keep going.
And so into WrestleMania 1, I think that they bring in Mr. T, which is like the hottest pop star in that particular time era right now.
Right. One of the hot, tough guys, a movie actor, TV actor. Yeah.
So They needed him at that particular point, so they bring him in for like a tag team match between Hulk Hogan and Mr. T. It was somebody else, and it was supposed to be David Schultz.
It was Hogan and Mr. T versus Piper and Paul Orndorff, and they both had Snuka was in T and Hogan's corner, and Bob Orton was in Piper and Orndorff's corner. But originally, it was supposed to be Piper and David Schultz. But because he had the heat with the John Stossel stuff, they replaced him with Paul Orndorff, Mr. Wonderful. And David Schultz, being very legit, very protective of the business, resented the idea of having an actor come in and play wrestler and be in the main event of this big wrestling event. First time it's ever happened. So, go ahead.
This is my favorite part, because Mr. T goes in the back in the back. He's like shaking hands with everybody and stuff like. And David Schultz don't like that. He's just like, no, you're not. This is where the boys hang out. You're not one of the boys, so you don't need to be back.
Right.
And so he didn't really respect him. I don't think he like shook his hand or anything like that.
Right.
And then I think Hulk Hogan and Mr. T went out for whatever reason during that period. And I guess they were sitting front row, or it was a show and Mr. T was sitting front row. And
it was a match. Yeah, it was a match that was going on, and T was sitting out in the front row. And they mentioned Schultz was backstage, and one of the producers that worked back there, Chief Jay Strongbow, was back there, and he saw him yelling at Mr. T, and he was like, hey, you're not supposed to be next to Mr. T. If you're going to cause any trouble, I'm going to have to fire you. And then David Schultz was like, well, I guess you're going to have to fire me. So he was like, all right, you're fired. Get out of here, basically. So then, T is sitting up front watching, I think it was Hogan was doing the match, but Schultz was like, hey, before I leave, I'm going to talk to one of my friends who's a Japanese wrestler. I can't remember his name. He's conveniently sitting up front right by Mr. T. So he's like, all right, I'm going to go say peace out to my friend. And when he goes up there, Chief Jay Strongbow sees him again, and he's like, hey, I told you, don't go next to Mr. T. And then there's a big commotion. The police come in, they arrest David Schultz, they take him down, handcuff him, put guns to his head and shit like that, and they take him out of there, and he's like fired, basically.
I was like, was that all really called for?
Yeah, that was right. That was another thing they were like, because at this point, David Schultz is a madman who beats his wife and kids and also beats reporters, and here he is again shouting at two random people. So shouting at Mr. T. So the police, as I think Cornette was trying to, people really bought into a lot of this stuff, and that was the persona Schultz had. So that was kind of the way the police treated him, and they took him out. And I think he was out for a couple of months, and then he had his lawyers talk to Vince, and they was like, nah, your contract's done, you're fired because you disobeyed the rules and blah, blah, blah. And there's conflicting, Schultz says, I was just going to talk to my friend. T was just there. I had no real beef with Mr. T, but then they had a clip from Hulk Hogan who was talking about, and his story is, of course, different, where he's like, well, I was in the ring, and then I noticed Schultz was out there, outside, shouting at Mr. T, and we had to break it up and da-da-da. Now, I don't trust Hulk Hogan. If you know Hulk Hogan, he's known, he's known to lie about just the basics of things. So I don't necessarily believe what Hogan is saying, right?
And he's in match wrestling.
Exactly. Thank you.
How do you know?
Thank you. You're in the middle. Thank you. You're in the middle of a match, and you conveniently know what's going on. See what I'm saying? So, and then Schultz's version, you can kind of look at it sideways and like, well, maybe what's Schultz's version? And then they mentioned this as the producers of the show. They had mentioned in another podcast. The one thing about this episode they wish they could have gotten was an interview with Mr. T to give his version of the story, and they couldn't match up their schedules, so we couldn't get Mr. T's side. But David Schultz has said before that him and T may have had some tension, but they didn't hate each other, because he's like, I got pictures with me and Mr. T backstage hanging out. So it's like, we didn't really have a problem. I just resented the fact that he was an actor getting a push, and I'm like a legit wrestler.
It wasn't Mr. T itself. It was just the fact of, it's just the principle of it.
Right. It was
coming to play wrestling.
Right. That was the thing that was pissing Schultz off. So from that point on, he's kicked out of WWF, and then it's like, well, just go to Jim Crockett, go to AWA, go to the NWA. Well, it turns out he the way he says it, Vince McMahon blackballed him, and none of the bigger companies would even touch him, would even bother to hire him. So he works at smaller companies for a while, and then he retires basically from wrestling. And we also find out that the lawsuit is settled. It doesn't go through court. It gets settled for $280,000. That's what John Stossel wins. And I can't remember. He was saying something about
his ears stopped ringing then.
Exactly. That was he was like, well, you know what? I was in pain, but once I got the money, for some reason the pain just kind of went away. I'm like,
it gradually went away.
Yeah, this motherfucker right here. Like, get the
right.
God, you are the worst. So
this is my favorite part of the story comes up.
So basically, after that, he's trying to figure out a way to make some money, and he just happens to become a bounty hunter. And that happens, and he tells the story of like how there was at the time a friend of his, I think, was a bounty hunter or was in law enforcement, and was like, hey, the FBI needs some help. This is one criminal they can't find. Maybe you can do something about it. And David Schultz found him and brought him in, and that started him as a bounty hunter. And of course, he's recognized as one of the best bounty hunters in like American history, which is kind of interesting, Like,
right. And I think the way it happened is like his friend told him that he was just like, man, we cannot catch this dude. And he was just like, I mean, do you have a bounty over his head or something like that? And then he told him, and he was just like, I'll find him.
Yeah, I'll find him for that money. Yeah, I'll find him. Yeah.
He was just like, I found him, and then I brought him in, handcuffed him, and there you go. Next thing I know, I'm a bounty hunter.
Basically, yeah. And he's
fantastic.
He's amazing, and he's like, sometimes being famous actually helps because like they may not talk to law enforcement, but they'll talk to like a regular guy or a celebrity, and they'll be more willing to talk to me. And like they show a clip of him. Some dude was like, he's like, Schultz is about to take him away, and he's like, "Oh yeah, you David Schultz. I remember you. You beat up such and such in the Coliseum." And they like snort some coke, and then like he's like walking out with handcuffs. He's like, "Yo, I'm cool.
Like, I get taken out by you. I'm cool with that."
Yeah, exactly. He's like, "Yeah, I'm cool. It's David Schultz. I'm getting arrested by like a celebrity, so it works out." And
what now? I didn't. So what they did? They do like a TV show about it.
Probably, or they were trying. He was probably shooting pilots. Basically like what bounty hunters do now on YouTube. There's certain YouTuber bounty hunters who have, footage of their adventures or acted out stuff, or even like predates Dog the Bounty Hunter. He was trying to do something like that, but he was legit though. That was the thing, because he's real. He ain't fake. He's real. So,
right.
He tells, what was it? He told a story about he was trying to find these two girls who were kidnapped. And he ended up tracking them down to Puerto Rico, and the guy would chain the girls up to the bathroom, to the toilet, and that would be the only way they could drink water. And he tracks them down to Puerto Rico and saves the girls. Some various stories like that. So he's an amazing bounty hunter, and then he notes, probably a couple of months after he was retired, Hulk Hogan and Mr. T go on to the Richard Belzer show. And if you're not familiar with Richard Belzer, he's an actor. You may recognize him from Law and Order SVU. He's the old tall guy with the glasses that's usually teamed up with Mr. T. That's that guy. And they go on his show, and he's kind of like Stossel. He's kind of talking shit on the business. Like, oh, it's kind of fake, and I don't really buy all this. And Hogan's like, hey, I'll show you a simple basic hold. And he basically puts him in a sleeper hold and chokes him out. Like, he fades away, falls back, busts his head on the floor. And there was like another attempt to kind of show that this is real. This is right before WrestleMania. And so it's like, so I slap a guy and it's a big problem, but Hogan chokes out a dude and drops him on and busts his head open, and it's just cool. Like, what is that about? You know what I'm saying?
And Mr. T is just kind of like, oh, it's fine. He's sleeping.
Yeah, Mr. T was hilarious in that though. He's like, hey T, how long do you think I should hold him like this? He's like, give him a couple more minutes. Mr. T was Mr. T was with the shits. So, and I love Jim Cornette was like, Hulk Hogan could have shot Richard Belzer in the head, and Vince McMahon was not going to fire Hulk Hogan. I was like, that's so true.
This man's making this man so much money. He could have shot him in the head on national TV. Vince would have made it go.
Yeah, exactly. Vince would have got that shit scrubbed from TV. So yeah, so WrestleMania goes on, and David Schultz is just living his life as a bounty hunter. He also does he's like a trucker too, so he's just finding different ways to make money, and he's living a new life. And that's pretty much the entire episode of like how, the things fell as they. Well, actually, no, that's not the entire episode. They brought up another point a couple years later when with the athletic commissions are trying to get more money out of the various sports teams for their licenses and taxes for operating in the state. Vince McMahon comes out legally and is like, yeah, wrestling's not a sport. we're entertainment, so you don't have to tax us, you know. And David Schultz is like, so wait a second, I'm doing all of this to try to keep kayfabe alive, and then the top guy in the business goes to the state, to the government. It's like, oh no, we're fake. This is all bullshit. No. It's predetermined.
Right.
Don't.
The top dog in the professional wrestling business.
Yeah, it's just like, oh no. It's like, wait. More taxes? Oh no. This is a play. This is a play. This is not NFL.
We're sports entertainment.
We're not professional wrestling. We're sports entertainment, and that sticks to this day. He does not say wrestling. He says sports entertainment because he's trying to dodge taxes. There's certain.
If you say that in any like promo, especially in these days on WWE, 9 times out of 10 you'll be fired.
Yeah, that's your ass.
You get suspended, whatever.
You're not gonna be on TV for a while, you know, unless you are Roman Reigns, because he's current day quote unquote Hulk Hogan to a degree. So, you know. And Schultz is like, so I did all of this, and you're just going to go ahead and expose everything? And then they had the clip where I guess they were in Baltimore, where they were signing, you know, some big check or whatever, kind of being like, yes, it's just entertainment. They had the friggin' Undertaker there, and his, like, makeup, like, this was back when Undertaker still wore makeup on his face to look like a dead person, and he's just there at this press conference like he's doing a party appearance. Like, that was so weird. I was like, what the hell was going on in there? Like, Taker's just standing there like, yes, it's not real, but here I am. Like, of all the wrestlers, why would it be Taker? It was so weird. But yeah, by this time Hogan was, I think, at WCW, so yeah, it was. Oh wow! I think by this point, so yeah, it was weird. So yeah, after all of that, Vince just exposed. When it's convenient for Vince to say it's not fake, then he says it's not fake. You see what I'm saying? And that's the moral of the story. It's like, oh, you could try to be, you know. I guess Schultz felt like he was keeping his integrity by being as real as he could, as, you know, because he is real, but like keeping that going. You know what I'm saying?
That true respect for the business. That he is a man, respected his craft, respected his model. And he said, I will go to the ends of the earth to make sure people don't know what they don't need to know. All you need to know is that we get out there, we try to wrestle, we try to win, you know, and then the better man wins, and that's all you need to know. Literally.
Yeah.
You know, whatever happens out there, it's literally all you need. Because you don't need to know anything else. Like,
yeah, honestly, I get that, but you know what? I love me a good shoot interview. I ain't gonna lie. I love knowing it's different now. Like, at that time, I get it, but like nowadays, like I don't mind knowing certain secrets, but I don't need to know too. I get a little annoyed when they willingly go out of their way to expose it, as opposed to it kind of sort of gradually getting exposed. Like, it's a delicate balance.
Behind the scenes and the beefs and who hates who for real.
Yeah, that stuff.
Like that. Yeah. But as far as like, oh, this is how a body slam is done. Let me show you the secret behind that.
Yeah, I don't need to know all of that.
Like, I don't like, you know, unless I'm like training to do this and I need to go to a proper training school to do that. For me to be like, oh yeah, so you're not really hurting each other. Yeah. I mean, some people are. Yeah. So it's just to this day. So it's just like I don't
like, people can get injured. They showed in the Brawl for Ball episode. You can make one bad move and one dude is paralyzed for the rest of his life. So yeah, it's legit, you know. So so then let's talk into some of the stuff, because some of the sort of suspect things that are dropped in this episode. So we have. Look, I'm gonna start with Eddie Mansfield. So and I've seen another shoot interview that was probably from 2009 or so, and he says an interesting line in this show, and it's his catchphrase apparently. He says, Abraham Lincoln did free the slaves, but he forgot to free the wrestlers. That is a very weird statement to make, sir. I think I know what you're trying to say, but it's kind of weird. Yeah,
I don't get it.
It's kind of,
get it when he said it.
Yeah, it was kind of like, huh? He freed the slaves, but I'm thinking he's trying to compare the life of a black person as a slave in America to the hardships of that to the hardships of being a professional wrestler. I think that's what he's.
It's stupid.
I think he's trying to make that comparison. It's not a good comparison. It's a little extreme and very stupid. But apparently that's his catchphrase, where he's like, well, this is. I guess he's trying to say being a wrestler without health care and bad booking is comparison to being a slave. I guess I don't know. It was a weird statement, but he seemed proud of it. But
Lex Luger tried to do this back when he was in like WWF. He tried to unionize wrestlers.
Was it Lex Luger? No,
yeah.
It was. No, it was Jesse Ventura. I know it was Jesse Ventura who was trying to do it.
That's what it was. Jesse Ventura.
Yeah, Jesse Ventura. Yeah.
So Jesse Ventura tried to unionize the wrestling business and get the guys health. He didn't have to go. He didn't have to expose the business. But by this time, everybody had a whole bunch of stuff. He didn't have to expose the business. He was like, listen, well, if y'all not trying to do this, this is what the action I'm going to take. I know I draw money and Vince needs me. So I'm going to leverage that. It's either you give me this or I'm going to walk. He ended up walking, got a part on a movie, decided to do the movie, and got exactly what he wanted.
Yeah.
He got in a different field nonetheless, but he had a union, so Eddie Mansfield took the bitch way out and decided was like, hey, I'm going to expose the business because you won't give me what. And I'm like, I can't cut it as a wrestler, and I don't draw money. So in order for me to try to get some type of money, I'm going to expose the business because I'm butthurt.
Yeah, try to get some sympathy. It's not a good look.
Right. And then David Schultz's phrase was, "We made money." He says that so
funny. He said, "I drew money." He said, "I drew money. I don't know about you.
We made money.
We made money. I know how to make people. I can talk people into the business. You're nothing but a phony." Like David Schultz is fucking great. But so then there's the David Schultz aspect, which is why it would have been nice to get Mr. T's perspective, because when you look at David Schultz, as they say, he's a big redneck dude. And conveniently, he's mad at Mr. T, who's the black man. And then it's kind of like, are you mad because he's an actor, or are you mad because it's like, hey, I've been busting my ass and this random black dude is getting a spot that he doesn't deserve. Like, there's a little hint of that. They don't really get into it that much, but like, that's kind of how you might bring a certain perspective to it. Now, I don't necessarily think that was it. I think he was legitimately just like, I don't like this actor getting this spot, because I saw another interview where he was like, he was always like that. Like when it was like reporters, promoters, like anyone who was not a wrestler, he would snap on, if they're backstage, he would get on their ass, like, get the hell out of the locker room. This is not for you. Do you have a license? You're not a licensed wrestler? Get out of here. He would always pull that. So that's how he was always on it. Now, I sent you a clip from the, well, not a clip, I sent you an episode. If you look it up on YouTube, it's from the Morton Downey Jr. show, which was basically like, if you took Springer and combined it with Bill O'Reilly, it was an early 90s trash TV show. And there was an episode, it's an amazing episode, where they have this guy who is basically doing what Eddie Mansfield does. He's exposing the business. And conveniently, David Schultz is there to get in this man's ass. Like, he is on this guy. Like, because he's trying to, because the guy was like, well, I used to be a wrestler. I was in Australia. I was a promoter he was like, hey, if I don't do this, if I don't, like, have sex with you, I'm going to fire you type of weird. It was some weird, shady stuff. But he's like, well, I'm trying to expose the business. People don't bleed is what they do. Fights are picked. And Schultz is just going after this guy. And it's amazing. Check it out. It's easy to find. Just search Schultz. It was like David Schultz, Morton Downey Jr. It's amazing. But then there's a part where there's another wrestler, Thunderbolt Patterson, who is a black man. And he's there trying, not necessarily expose the business, but he's trying to be like, hey, the wrestling world is kind of racist. And, well, not kind of racist, it's pretty racist, and I'm not getting my fair shot. And there is a legit side to that, although I will say, like you said, Thunderbolt Patterson doesn't necessarily make the strongest argument, because there are other guys who are there who are like, yeah, you had a chance and you kind of blew it. That was kind of what some people's argument was. But then David Schultz's argument is,
I feel like every guy on that show, or when that particular part happened, they were making this kind of claim where it's like, oh, I'm not racist because I have a black friend.
Yeah, it was kind of like that, you know. And then
it's just like you, and we're like, okay, you wanted, even David Schultz was kind of, you wanted a handout because you're black. Like, all you wanted.
Yeah, right. You think you should get a handout because you're black. I'm like, that's not how that works. And I want to be on Thunderbolt's side, but it's wrestling and everyone's shady regardless of color. Because I know there was one guy who was like, well, you know, I hired you, but then you didn't show up for this. And then I'm like, okay, you're not making the best argument for yourself. But I'm just saying, you can kind of, just some evidence, you can kind of look at Schultz and be like, well, maybe, like, is he? But is I don't think he is. But like, it's a little tendency there. There's a little. I mean, you know, it's a little bit there. But it's very interesting.
What it is like, David Schultz doesn't. He doesn't like a lazy man.
Yeah.
It just so happens that particular man
is black.
Or because back then, our group of people tend to be quote unquote lazy. So it's
right, yeah.
Right. So he's just like, you group of people, you know what I'm saying, don't like to work for anything. You want it to you. You just so happen to be black. If the stereotype was placed upon Asians, I wouldn't like Asians because they're lazy. Not because they're Asian.
Yeah.
So
I
know. And they were just saying like, oh, Rocky Johnson. He was like, Rocky Johnson made money.
Yeah, that's right. He like, Tony Atlas made money. Rocky Johnson, like he was making those two. But I'm pretty sure they can get on this show and talk about some race. I know I've seen interviews with Tony Atlas who talk about all the racist shit he had to deal with. So it's like, it's interesting. But the other thing I like about that was when Captain. Did you watch the whole thing? Because I didn't rewatch the whole thing, but I know Captain Lou Albano pops up in the video, and yes, he is. And it was a moment where all the guys, like everyone has their own reasons to like each other and don't like each other. But when the one guy who was trying to expose the business started talking, all of them just attacked that one guy. They don't like each other, but
he started talking, like, shut your ass up.
Basically, yes. It was like, I don't like you. As soon as the guy who's trying to expose him, they all turn to him like, you shut up, you a fake, and you a da-da-da. Like, it was amazing just to see all of these guys. Even David Schultz, who's not in the business, and he's not a wrestler. I don't think he was a wrestler still at that point, maybe. But he was he was so hardcore to protect the business. He's like, you know, he's like, the guy was like, do you know what a booker is? He's like, yeah, I know what a booker is. I know what a cheat is. I know what a phony is. And that's you. There, like, he would quickly turn it right back on the other guy. It was beautiful. Just check it out. Lou Albano.
But I'm not even gonna tell that part. They need to watch it. But it's just like, it was so, you can see how passionate this man was about
Lou Albano,
a business that he wasn't even part of.
Yes, still protected. Lou Albano was like, I think one guy was like, dude, I think the host had asked him, like, do guys throw fights? And Lou Albano was like, look, I manage teams. None of the guys that I've ever fought with ever threw a fight. I always win my fights legit. Like, he was just like, they were just doing their best. It was amazing.
And you could tell they were trying to, like, defend it because it's just like, knowing what I know now, you were literally, like, lying to this, like, talk show, because he was just like, I've been beaten by a better
opponent. Yes. I never. Yes.
He was just like, I never like laid down through a fight.
Brilliant.
Been determined.
Brilliant.
It was just like
brilliant.
Fantastic.
Just brilliant.
I was like, this is great.
This is great stuff.
Because and the guy's just like, he's like, so are the matches predetermined? He was like, yeah. He was like, and mind you, you know what I'm saying? Like, Eddie Mansfield, before the show even aired, has already showed people how to blade. And so he was just like, have you... And so the guy's on there, he's talking about how this other guy, this promoter, is forcing him to blade because he wouldn't sleep.
Yeah.
Which is stupid.
Yeah, that didn't even make sense.
So he was just like, so have you... He was like, what's a blade job? What's that? He was... And so... Dr. David Schultz, he was like, I've never been forced to blade a day in my life. He's like, I've never. And then
as he says this with his big ass scar on his forehead, and then Lou Albano's like,
was just like, if I ever forcibly cut myself, my wife would divorce me tomorrow.
As he says that with all these scars on his forehead. It's great.
It's just like you are like defending the business with your honor. Like,
yes,
I've never been forced to blame.
Yes,
he's like, I've been busted open, I've bled. He's like, because people have busted me open. I've never been forced to ever cut myself by any promoter ever.
Great,
like,
great. And then there's another episode where they're talking about bounty hunters, and he's basically, and there's like people who are like anti-bounty hunter or whatever, or like certain bounty hunters need rules of protection, and like David Schultz is just cutting promos on those guys too, like, because he's clearly not a wrestler at this point, but he is still using his promo work to just work the crowd on it. It's great. It's great stuff. Searching Joe Morton Jr., David Schultz, that shit is great. But yeah, this is a really good episode. Definitely a lighter episode than the previous one, which was, like I said, focused more on the murder of destruction of a family. This one is just like, hey, I was a dude, worked in a business, I took it seriously, and I risked my job, lost it, but I'm still striving. I'm still the shit type of deal. And it's kind of sad because he's been blackballed from the business because there's a lot of stuff he could have done, but because he got kicked out, he's not as remembered as well. You know what I'm saying? But that's the draw of the cards. But yeah, great, really good episode. Say what? Say what?
No one ever watches this. I would like to hope so.
I hope he does. I doubt it, but
me too.
He should. He should check it out.
This is kind of like he's portrayed in the actor.
Every time he pops up in the series, it's always some shady shit. Like when he was in the snooker one, and there's they got the money, and then shit just quiet down. It's not good. So, yeah, those are our thoughts on the recent episode of Dark Side of the Ring, Dr. Schultz and the Slap Heard Round the World. Check it out on.
What'd you rate it?
Viceland. Geez, do I have to grade it? I give it an 8. It's solid. 10 out of 10. It was good. Good episode.
9 out of 10.
9 out of 10. Yeah, like 9 out. I mean, it's still an 8. I don't 9.5. 10 out. It was good. I really enjoyed the episode. I can't think of an episode I didn't like. Like even the episode I thought I wasn't gonna like, the Montreal Screwjob, I still liked. So it's like I don't think any of the episodes are bad.
I've yet to see that one.
Yeah, that's from the first. I mean, it's pretty basic, but it's still it's fine. Because the situation is interesting enough, and they do a good enough job retelling it for the most part because they don't interview Shawn Michaels. But anyway, so yeah, that's this is gonna be a recurring thing we're gonna do for the next we got 3 more episodes after this. Next episode is about the UWF.
Yeah, UWF. What's the guy's name? Something Adam.
Herb something. Anyway, doesn't matter. Herb Abrams, was that it?
Yeah, I think it's Herb Abrams.
Yeah, I think it's Herb Abrams.
I think it's Herb Abrams. Yeah, like I said, I'm definitely about to find out. The next episode is Cocaine and Cowboy Boots, the Herb Abrams story.
Yes, but it should be fun because I don't know. I don't really know much. Like just hearing that name, I don't know much. So this should be exciting. This will be an episode where
the title, Cocaine and Cowboy Boots.
Yeah,
that sounds awesome.
That sounds like wrestling to me. So yeah, that should be fun. And like I said, this series can be seen on Viceland. That's our quick review. Let us know what you thought of the episode in the comments. Don't forget to give this video a like, share it, and subscribe to this channel. Also, want to thank my boy Avery Jones for joining me. Avery, let these people know where they can find you.
Of course, you can find me on all platforms. You can find the Avery Jones Podcast on all podcast platforms. You can find the Avery Jones Podcast on YouTube. Just type in the Avery Jones Podcast. As well, you can find me on Instagram. And check out all of my shenanigans there. _call me Jones. That's _CALLMEJONS.
There you go. And then link to his channel will also be in the description and in the annotations. Go check it out. Show him some love. And once again, thanks for watching this. And stay tuned for more videos. Peace.